Florida Panthers fans, if you are watching this, if you care at all about what the future of your franchise might look like, then you've come to the right place. But if you've got your 2 Stanley Cup rings plugging your ears right now, then I totally understand that. Considering this is a team that has now been back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, they've been to the Stanley Cup final quite a few times in the last few years, how could they possibly end up with some good players down the line? Well, somehow they've managed to have some good bets that they've taken over the years, and leading the way with a few guys in the depth category for me, there might be a bit of a surprise with some people that I have Linus Eriksson in here. Now, I was a fan of Eriksson when he was a draft eligible for 2024, and this was a player that I had in my first round, and he just didn't have the best season the last year. He just kind of was struggling to earn the minutes with the pro team this year that I was hoping he would, but he was with Timrå in the SHL for a while, and while he didn't play a whole lot of minutes, every time I did catch him, I thought he looked pretty decent. So we'll see where this year goes. He's always been a player to me that is more smarts and overall intelligence on both sides of the puck, and I think that the talent fundamentals as they grow over the next few years should help him grow into a better and better player, and I think he is going to be one of these guys that's more of a slow burn, but a good one at that. And I do think he does have that methodical, physical style of play that Florida seems to like. On the other side of the coin, we've got Grayson Scouching, who went back to the WHL again, had another really good year on a team that wasn't amazing, but he did have a really impactful role on that team. He had points on about 40% of his team's goals. He did have a really strong 30-goal campaign, over half a goal a game, a really impressive, skilled forward who I am very excited to see play pro hockey this season if that's where he's going to end up. I do think there's a lot of skill in his game. I do think there are some gaps defensively there. He's not going to be that prototypical Florida Panthers type player, but he does have that sort of offensive ability that there is a role for in Florida's lineup. In a similar fashion, Jack Devine is here. Now, I've been watching Jack Devine since he was about 16 or so, and I remember absolutely loving what he showed when he was 16, being a little bit underwhelmed when he was 17, but stunned he went to the 7th round and was a flyer for Florida and has immediately made everyone look a little bit silly, because with Denver, I have always felt that he has looked like one of the most important players on that roster. There's a lot of skill, he's got some decent size, even though he's not big. He manages to play, I think, a little bit bigger than he is, but that intensity level, the competitiveness is what I really love about his game, and I'll be very curious to see what happens with him over the next little while. I think he's worked his way up into being a potential NHL player with a role somewhere down the lineup, and I think all 3 of these guys all could end up in a variety of different areas of the lineup for Florida, depending on what they need, but 2 of these guys definitely bring some good offensive upside, and Eriksson, I think, brings just really strong two-way upside that I think a team like Florida does really value. In the maybes category, there's a lot of other interesting players in here. Hunter St. Martin was a player that I hadn't really seen a whole much by the time they drafted him, but I felt every time I watched Medicine Hat last year that he was one of the more underrated players on that entire team. He went out and scored 39 goals last year, which is pretty remarkable, honestly, and while he's not the most diverse skill set player, he's not the best puck distributor, he is a strong, big, northbound player that attacks the net but has a good shot from range. There's a lot that I've grown to really like about St. Martin, and I will be very curious to see what happens with him this year. Stepan Gorbanov took a massive step forward in his game this year. He was always a player that I would see once in a while before Florida drafted him and went, boy, he really popped once or twice that game, but he still looks like he's just not fully there yet in terms of growth and being comfortable on his feet, and he took a big step this year. He was a successful player in Russia's 2nd division this year, which is not what I expected this quickly in his game. I'm not totally sold on him being an NHL player just yet, but he definitely has some good puck protection skill, some good overall skill level in open ice, and a really great frame to play up the middle where, yeah, I could potentially see a bottom 6 NHL player here. Matvei Shiravin, I didn't think took the biggest step forward this season, and over the year before he was drafted, I really sort of ended up a little bit lower on Shiravin the more I saw, but he still does have a remarkable talent level to play around with and see where it goes. Really smart, capable, defense-first type player with really good set of feet under him. He gets around the ice really effectively. He does have a little bit of offense in his game that definitely came out a little bit more this season, and I do feel like he has an interesting path ahead of him regardless of where he goes, but this is a guy that I'm hoping to see in the KHL full time, and I imagine he could be a guy that pushes his way into the NHL at some point, but there are some gaps in his game, especially off the puck in his own end, that were huge holes that still need to be worked on a bit, but still, an impressive player and a good one that they've picked up. In a similar vein, I also really do like what Albert Wickman brings to the table. This is a guy who's a little bit older and plays only in the 2nd division in Sweden, but he's always just been that rock solid defense first type guy, and I'm still not sold at all on NHL potential, but I do think he's a step up on a lot of the guys in the tier below him in terms of projectability and the style of play that he has projecting to the NHL, at least in some way. And I wouldn't bet on it as hard as I would with guys like Gorbanov or Sharavin, but he is a type of player that I could see in the NHL sometime playing some kind of role, even if it's not, full-time for many, many years on end. But at the very least, I feel like he could be a good player in Sweden and a mainstay down the lineup there, and we'll see where his NHL potential goes. To me, one of the best draft picks of this past year was picking up Arvid Drott in the 5th or 6th round. I think Arvid Drott has a lot more in the tank that he can really work on. I think as long as he can really develop a high-end shot, which you might not expect considering looking at his historical production rates where all he has done in his career is score goals. His goal scoring is largely derived from more of a diverse tool set offensively. He's more of a tipping threat, going to the net, getting rebounds, but also having a decent shot from mid-range, finding some open ice around the crease and getting some easy tap-ins. He's not small at all. He's a player that I think skates really, really well. If he can gain more of that physical edge that I kind of want to see out of him a little more for a guy like him, then I think there's a lot of room where he could grow into a really impressive player. He's not there yet, but I definitely see a really, really intriguing development curve for him. There's a couple of goalies in here too. Kirill Gerasimov went back to Russia and had another really strong season, stopping a ton of pucks. He didn't have the hardest workload this year, but he did do pretty well. And the other one is Denis Gabrakdomov. Now, this is a guy who I had never heard of and might have had the best last name in the 2024 draft class. I only put him here because towards the end of last year, I can't remember exactly how I did this, but I saw a couple of games in Russia where I went, who is this goalie on this team that nobody thinks about that is looking like this? The gigantic athletic save machine facing 40 shots a game on this team. Who is this guy and is he draft eligible? And I look and I go, oh, that's who Denis Gabrakdomov is. I'm not going to say I'm certain he'll be an NHL player, which is why he's in here, but he is a player with a really intriguing combination of size, athleticism, and just results that I think definitely bode well for a Russian goaltender long term. I don't know if I'd expect him right away, but for a kid who faced 40 shots a game last year, saved 93% of those shots, and outperformed their save percentage that was expected based on their workload by about 30%, that's a pretty good combination of abilities there, and I've really liked what I've seen out of him, so that might be another really interesting pickup. And when you've got a whole group of people studying goaltending for the team itself, maybe they've found something interesting with Gabrakdomov in the future at some point. There's not a whole lot in the bottom tier here that I want to go over. I like the potential of Shamar Moses, but I just feel like he has a really long way to go to get to the NHL. I like Sandis Vilmanis okay, maybe Marek Alsher could be a thing, but they're getting on the older side of the coin, and they haven't really moved the needle in the AHL quite to the point where I would expect them to be NHL players. Shea Bush was interesting in the limited time I saw him with Everett, but again, I don't really have the confidence to project him as an NHL player. Overall, though, the Florida Panthers have done a pretty good job here. They are a team that arguably does not have the worst prospect pipeline in the league, and they are a team that consistently has been amongst the best in the National Hockey League for a number of years in a row. Doing both of those things at once while also not necessarily having super high draft picks is a really impressive accomplishment. So I think for Panthers fans, if they have any interest whatsoever in what the future of their team might have on it, there are some interesting players here, both that have a lot of upside in terms of skill and production and offense, but also some good, safe, physical, reliable defensive players that may very well turn out to be decent NHL players. I don't know about certainty with a lot of these guys, but there are some interesting bets here, and I think the Florida Panthers are in pretty good hands developmentally and drafting-wise, and I imagine that that is also a bit of a part of the organization that has ended up so successful in the National Hockey League over the last few years. So hopefully that trend continues, and we shall see where these guys go. And with that, we're going to call it. If you liked the video, definitely like and subscribe. If you really liked it, definitely consider a subscription over at Scouching.ca, where you can get access to all kinds of fun data tools and our Discord server and plenty of other fun stuff that you're just not going to find anywhere else on the internet. So check that out at Scouching.ca. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.